Brings us to Africa. Countries like Nigeria and Angola sit on massive oil reserves. For years, they have depended on oil exports to power their economies. But in moments like this, those exports become even more valuable because now every barrel sold is worth more than it was before. Billions of dollars start flowing into the country. Foreign exchange increases. Government revenues rise. Economic activity begins to shift. On paper, this looks like a win, a distant war creating opportunity. But that is only half the story. Because while the country is earning more, something else is happening at home. And most people do not see it. You might think if a country produces oil, then its people should have cheaper fuel, right? But that is not how the system works. Because oil is not just a national resource. It is a global commodity. And in a global market, price decides everything. Buyers from around the world are competing for the same supply. Europe, Asia, America. And they are willing to pay more. Much more. So for oil producers, the decision becomes simple. Sell where the profit is highest, not where the need is greatest.
This is an expat alert specifically designed for Africa for April 2026 because we have some crazy things happening on the continent right now, such as the fact that the president of South Africa, Ramaphosa, has taken a page out of President Donald Trump's book and brought in the military to handle violence in Cape Town. But that's not it. We also have a lot of more interesting things happening on the continent that you're going to want to listen to. Because as you can tell, we are in unprecedented times, but Africa is quickly changing.
Exactly. So we always say it from the beginning of our first video here on this channel. We said Africa is going to be the place to be. So a lot of things are happening. There's a lot of confusion that's happening, but also there's a lot of vision that is happening. This is kind of what's going on around the world outside of Africa is bringing Africa together to work together and rise. So we see what's to come in the future. But the question is, do you? So make sure you like the video, leave your comments below, and give us what you see that is happening in Africa. Maybe you might be in a different country. You might be in countries in West Africa, East Africa, South Africa. Let us know in the comments because we need to, stay connected that way so we can understand, wow, things are happening for the better in a way, but sometimes you have to
for the worse as well.
Yeah,
in
for
some
the worse
places
too. So what's going on around the world is bad, but this might give us an opportunity. And talking about Africa, this might give Africa an opportunity to rise.
Absolutely, because listen, now that President Ramaphosa has decided to apply military troops to Cape Town, South Africa, which has been recognized as the best city in the world to visit, it does make you wonder, man, safety down there, how is that going to look? And so you may instead want to look at different countries like a Seychelles, a Botswana, a Mauritius, or a Zambia. But get this, number one on our list to talk about is the fact that oil prices are surging, which means immediate revenue for African producers such as Nigeria, Angola, Algeria, because they all benefit when oil spikes. Iran's conflict disrupts the supply, prices rise globally, of course, and that means more export income for African states. So this is a prime time for these African nations to unify in the midst of chaos and to trade amongst each other, which they are already starting to do and are in discussions currently.
Exactly. Yeah, I believe Angola, Botswana, and Zambia, they are starting to come together to work out a deal where they can create a oil refinery. So this should be done by next year. So in the next 12 months, you will be seeing this. So this tells me that, hey, Africa is starting to
superpower
status. Yeah, they're starting to think wise. They're starting to see how things are shifting in the world and being like, wow, okay, we could take advantage of this. As we always say, wow, that was fast. As we always say, we can take advantage of this. So
as they should. Look, round of applause. Somebody leave some clap emojis down in the comments, because I know we are not too far geographically from a Botswana, from a Zambia, from an Angola, okay? That is lit. Now, number 2, Africa becomes the alternative energy supplier. Europe and Asia need less dependence on the Middle East. And I'm gonna just be honest with you, I'm not one to be super supportive of the Middle East and Arab nations for things that they do that happen in South Sudan, the East African slave trade, okay? And so Africa becomes the new backup energy zone for both Europe and Asia. Wow, this is looking a lot like ancient times 2.0. This conflict, according to the Atlantic Council, opens new opportunities for Africa in the global energy market.
Exactly. And we see what happened in Niger. I want to say back in 2022, 2023, where they pretty much kicked out France because France was taking advantage of the resources and getting their supply for electricity to France at like a crazy discounted rate. And you could tell, hey, Africa has the resources. Now they are starting to, make sure they patent the resources before they do anything else. So it's happening, y'all. It's happening.
It's a great time to be on the continent, 6 years early.
Yeah.
In our case, but for you, maybe you can get in early as well. Now, number 3, shipping routes are quietly turning towards Africa. Because if we were just to look at ancient times, then we're going to do a history deep dive another day, but let me just put it in simplistic short words for you. The Hormuz instability is rerouting trade. So African ports gain importance. Before the Strait of Hormuz, people would actually boat and sail around the Cape of Good Hope down in South Africa to trade and get their oil or their commodities up to Europe. So Mozambique, South Africa, and Namibian ports are going to be super important once again. Now, this is coming from Reuters. Ports activity is rising due to rerouted shipping. Now, you don't see Namibia or South Africa, Mozambique having a speaker saying, hello, our ports are open. These people are silently holding the resources and trading because, listen, what's understood doesn't have to be explained. When you are a business, a trade route, when you have resources geographically or anything, just like an entrepreneur, you don't have to shout. You just do the trades, make them happen, negotiate your contracts, and you keep moving.
Exactly, because that's what's happening in Africa. They're starting to be wise. They know how to move around now. They like, ooh, we've been waiting on this time, and it's really it's just coming back to the word too. I'll say that it's starting to prophecy is starting to unfold slowly. But you just gotta have eyes to see.
The last will be first and the first shall be last. Now, number 4, listen to this. Global power is fragmenting, but Africa gains the leverage. My. US, China, Gulf nations are all competing for what? Influence. But Africa becomes the negotiation zone, the table in the midst of chaos, where people come to the table of different nations and say, hey, we need to include Africa in these negotiations because they have a lot of the resources we need. War is shifting global distribution of power and is affecting Africa's standing. Now, that's not coming from me. This is coming from futureuae.com. So Dubai is saying, look, Africa's standing up. All the nations are standing to say, oh, look at Africa. They're rising. The place that they thought would never rise, the place that patriotic Americans say, oh, it's an asshole, oh, it's horrible. Well, guess what? The continent is rising in the midst of all of the critiques of the nations. Exactly. Because what's anointed by Yah cannot be stopped. Okay?
Exactly, yeah. And that's good. I'm glad you said that. That's perfect right there. Okay, baby. That's perfect. So, yeah, Africa's just gonna rise.
Absolutely. Now, number 5, de-dollarization benefits emerging markets, including Africa. Countries are moving away from USD dominance. New trade systems are being implemented, like China and BRICS and other trade systems. You also have other currencies in Asia, like the yen. War is accelerating the de-dollarization trend. This is something that President Donald Trump probably did not foresee or did not take into account, because like we were talking about in a previous video, the fact that they're even talking about trading oil in yuan shows you that if that happens, the dollar will quickly slip and slide, which is why we always tell our clients, you need to know international finance before you ever get on a plane to come to the continent, okay? Because Africa can trade in multiple currencies, not just USD. We also learned this when we lived in the Swahili coast. I'd hate to be the bearer of bad news for you patriotic Americans that think everybody trades in US dollar. Guess what? In Tanzania, they trade in Tanzanian shillings. In Mauritius, they trade in Mauritian rupee. Everywhere that we have been, they trade in their own currencies. They do not use the dollar, okay? Like, I can't go out and give somebody $1 for a coffee. They're gonna look at me like, rupee, please, Mauritian rupee, okay? Now, number 6, mineral demand is exploding because war and technology and energy shifts create a demand for lithium, cobalt, and copper. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we did a video a couple months ago about Zambia's increase in copper and how the commodities are rising. Still holding gold, by the way. Listen, according to the Washington Press, rising mineral prices are already boosting African growth. Like
their currency.
Yeah.
So Zambian currency shot up. So that means that if you were
got those
in
resources.
Yeah, if you were in Zambia and you make USD, that means that you will use less USD and use more Zambian kwacha.
So it would be closer. It'd be closer to the USD and kwacha.
Exactly. So if one thing was $5 yesterday, and then something happened today, it would be like $7. So I hope that makes sense, because things are changing like that, and you gotta know the importance of the exchange, the foreign exchange market.
And this is also really the importance of entrepreneurship, because if you are in a position where you are working a job, then that can kind of limit you, and you can have a ceiling or a limit on how much you can make. But if you're an entrepreneur, once these currencies get up there, maybe it's not advantageous anymore for you to just have American clients. Maybe then you start trading with other African clients, other Asian clients, other Dubai. Maybe you start trading with other nations and other people in your global business like we do. Now, number 7, Africa's growth is outpacing the global average. Don't let nobody tell you otherwise, because, ma'am, sir, this comes from the Washington Press. In case you didn't know, Africa is projected to have a 4.3% growth versus slower global rates. So while the West is destabilizing, Africa is expanding. And we happen to live in the best African country to do business. That's literally number 1 for business, Mauritius, Africa. And so if you want an entry gateway into the business climate of Africa without corruption, without the legalities, without the bureaucracy, Mauritius should be your top destination. Check out the Mauritius Africa playlist down below. Now, get this. Number 8, the shift from banking aid to investment power. Even the US is investing heavily in Africa. They erased the aid that they used to do and actually changed it to be more like of an investment type of movement, partnership, more like, hey, you're on the same caliber, we can trade with you, you can trade with us, we can see what we can do innovation-wise, technologically-wise, anything like that. So you see less reliance on US and European aid, which is fantastic, because you have to have that somewhat difficult sweet spot of, let me learn entrepreneurship, work for myself. Yes, it may be a little bit tough in the beginning, but once you get your hands on the wheel and you know how to drive, oh child, your business is going to take off. So you're not relying on these NGOs and these donate the clothes. No, now you have fashion designers. Now you have people that are designing and networking and trading across borders. And you cannot have in Africa or anywhere else in the world a society that does not have businesses doing business with other businesses or businesses doing business with other consumers. So we're also talking foreign investment, private capital, and intra-African trade. Because according to the Washington Press, aid is falling, but investment is rising.
Exactly. So that's a good point, because the buyers are starting to come to the sellers. Just how the Botswana president said, look, Donald Trump, we're not going to no White House. You come to us. You want to buy from us, so you come check it out. Why would I try to load up, do all this stuff, pay $15,000 to just to enter the country and this and that, my whole cabinet? But no, you come to us because you are going to buy from us. And this is what's happening.
Let's set the record
so
straight.
There's prime ministers, there's presidents that's stepping up, saying these things. So, they're starting to come together.
And let's not forget the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I remember when I was sitting in a meeting and I was with a lot of diplomatic people back in Tanzania in Dar es Salaam. It was an entrepreneur event for women. And the first time that I heard about this was during that meeting. And so they were talking about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. If you have not been to like African business events like that, you should go to one at least once in your life or a couple of times, because you really get to see that the continent is not broke, okay? Don't let nobody tell you the continent is broke, because they're not. Internal trade across Africa is increasing. You're going to see less dependence on external systems, and war is accelerating this shift because external supply chains become unstable. And so you're going to have a type of borderless Africa that enables free trade, where you can send, like for example, my strawberries came from Tunisia. I looked on the pack of my strawberries. I'll probably pick up some more today. And I was like, oh, where'd these come from? My strawberries came from North Africa, right? So I get a little bit of Tunisia in my daily diet if I'm eating my strawberries. This is the foundation of the Africa Free Trade Agreement, so that people can send, like Mauritius has a lot of sugarcane. Maybe Mauritius is sending sugarcane to Botswana or South Africa or Kenya or Tunisia or whoever needs the sugarcane. Maybe Tunisia sending the strawberries also to Tanzania or to Ghana or whoever across the continent, because we have 54 beautiful, vibrant countries here that you can trade and do business with. Africa is emerging as an aviation and logistics hub. If you have not been paying attention to these airplane routes, the top two airlines that are functionally working are Kenya and Ethiopia, which are rising expediently in air transport. Like, this is when you wake up and your business explodes and you're like, oh, thank you, Abiya, thank you, Most High, because they woke up after this Iran war and they were booked out because you don't have United Arab Emirates. Sorry, you don't have United Arab Emirates Airways. You don't have Qatari Airways anymore. You don't have Saudi Arabian Airways anymore. Now you gotta go with Kenya and Ethiopia. Those are your most international routes, which happen to be in East Africa, which is very sophisticated because of geographically the fact that you have access to the Indian Ocean, you have access to the Middle East, which nobody's flying there at all. You have access to Asia, you have access obviously to Southern Africa, and so these hubs are gonna start to replace the Dubais of the world for international travel. Now, according to Reuters, Kenya and Ethiopia are named as emerging hubs in current conflict. This really reminds me of Joseph in Egypt, how the world can be in chaos. But if you are the chosen, if you are the one that has the resources, the wisdom, if you are the one that has what the folks need, just look at the Kenyan Airways stock rates. Just look at Ethiopian Airways. I'll let you do that research by yourself, because it's quite astounding. Their businesses have literally exploded overnight. And you know, they're dealing with the overflow. All praises to the Most High.
Yeah, and one day things can change.
Yeah,
that's what you gotta know. That's what you gotta believe. About entrepreneurship. You have to believe that. You gotta know it, because it can happen overnight. So, you know, just make sure that you're in the right position. So this is why we wanted to do this video, because we say it time after time, but hopefully you hear it this time of Africa. This is a good position for Africa to be in, and they are ready to do so and step into that position. So, you know, all praises to the Most High. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this information. Leave your comments below. Like the video, and we'll talk to you in the next one. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.